Geometry Dash is nearly 10 years old, so I've decided that I'm gonna cover every single top 1 hardest level that was ever in this game. Some of these creations are quite obscure, and it'll surprise you how many of these were top 1 without anyone ever knowing. So let's dive into this. The first level is first level, and wasn't much harder than the official levels. Since this was the first featured level ever, the map was pretty popular, so it was highly likely someone beat this. Unfortunately, the level was deleted in a purge a couple years later. Our next level is the first 3 trials, one of the few featured levels without stars. During this time, levels were becoming increasingly difficult, and this stage showcased challenging and harsh timings combined with tightly controlled ship parts. However, this would be quickly dethroned. Rainbow Road, created by Carbon Elite, was likely legitimately beaten since the creator had also beaten the first 3 trials, which explains why this level is so heavily inspired by it. It's kind of insane how you get more stars beating Time Machine than you do with this. In addition, Rabbit just released a patch note that changed the upload process for levels. Before update 1.02, levels could be verified using practice mode, but after the update, beating the level was required for verification. This change, however, led to an exploit that was present until update 1.2, but more on that later. Imagine beating the toughest level at the time and simply naming it S. Despite the level only using the cube mode, it showcased very demanding gameplay with several near frame perfect jumps, but these creations would continue to get even harder with the release of update 1.1. Update 1.1 was a very controversial update. There wasn't much content, and the content in it wasn't very good. This is a mirror portal, a portal that flips the screen, completely messing up muscle memory. This portal will begin getting abused and would inflate the difficulty of levels drastically. And so, D by Die was born. Following the strange trend of naming levels with just a single letter. Apart from ship gameplay that was ahead of its time, there isn't much to say about this level since update 1.1 was so bare bones with its features. During this time, Geometry Dash was receiving near monthly updates, which is completely unheard of nowadays. So it isn't all too surprising that there would only be a single update 1.1 top 1. Following the introduction of update 1.2, a new game mode was added for the first time in history, the Gravity Ball. This allowed players to switch gravity, paving the way for a new era of difficulty. And soon, Demon Park by M2Co would be unleashed upon the earth. Despite the previous levels not holding much influence and only garnering a few thousand downloads, Demon Park exploded in popularity, and it all started a couple months earlier. So far, M2Co had 1 level to his name, but the name of M. Seriously, I don't understand the point of all these old levels having single letter names, but that's besides the point. The level was 7 stars, and M2Co felt like he could push the difficulty even more, and would go on to attempt creating a 9 star, the hardest difficulty at the time. Unbeknownst to him, however, he had just changed the game forever. RobTap would quickly notice this level, and would end up releasing an entirely new difficulty just to compensate for how difficult this map truly was. The level was one of the first few to incorporate the gravity ball in a difficult setting, which was a stark contrast to most creators who used it like this. Furthermore, it was among the earliest levels to be showcased on YouTube, a rare phenomenon back then. With this new demon difficulty, let's observe how creators react to it. This is Darnock, one of the first few people who had ever played Geometry Dash. Darnock was always quick to adapt to unique hurdles, and To the Grave was no exception. This level pushed the boundaries of Demon Park's gameplay in every single way, rendering it to be an extremely difficult challenge. Most players didn't appreciate that though, as the level spent most of its history in the dislike range. When a player saw a level back then, they'd instantly dislike it if it slightly showed their skill issue, and To the Grave was a prime target. Fortunately, years later, the level has returned to a favorable like ratio, albeit very slowly. The impact of Demon Park was evident in the community, with the emergence of Extreme Park. The level requires precise muscle memory and is notorious for its difficulty, and you can still observe remnants of the difficulty in the level's comment section today, labeling it hardest level. This level wasn't a minuscule difficulty increase like To the Grave either. Extreme Park posed a significant challenge, and interestingly, Demon Park is now considered an easy demon, while Extreme Park is categorized as a hard demon, which is insane. This era of Geometry Dash also saw the introduction of the now defunct Everplay, which allowed players to record replays of their gameplay. Rabbiticle, a highly credible player, would showcase this creation, but unfortunately, with the discontinuation of Everplay in 2018, it has been lost to time. Another hard demon that would be released at the time would be Bicycle. And just off the top comments, you already got a gist of the level. If you don't, just think of what Cold Sweat would look like in Update 1.2, and you got your answer, as the level is extremely weird. It wouldn't even be well received either, as despite accumulating hundreds of thousands of downloads, the level has remained at 0 likes for years. It didn't help either that the level was speculated to be illegitimately verified for the longest time, until recently the creator was contacted and confirmed that in fact, it was legitimately completed. Geometry Dash Update 1.4 had just been released, but unfortunately added little to the game besides the ability to change the player's size, which would be a staple in terrible Clutterfunk remakes, including Rhythm Time Machine by Popomon. Luckily for the community, this level would never be rated, sparing the sanity of star grinders. The level features an obscene amount of diverse skill sets, from extremely tight ship parts you need to navigate to limbo levels of memory. It has it all. Remember Rabbit Skull, the player who beat Extreme Park? Well, he would prove his skill once again by verifying the infamous creation, Definite Integral. Just like Extreme Park, the level would be memory oriented, and would be despised by the community. Nonetheless, it held the title of the hardest level in Update 1.4 for the rest of the update, with Rob teasing an intriguing update on the horizon. Update 1.5 was a breath of fresh air for the community. The game finally introduced copy pasting into the game, a revolutionary feature. Oh yeah, it also added an entirely new game mode to the roster, but that's not that important. Imagine the amount of levels I can pump out now. But while some creators struggled to master the UFO, others wasted no time in pushing it to its limits. Popomon would see this new revolutionary mode and would use it for less than a second in his next level, Pink World. The level was truly ahead of its time, as despite only having 400 downloads, it is far into the dislike range, proving to be too much for Popomon, and so never returning to the top 1 title ever again. It wouldn't be long, however, until a top 1 would actually push the UFO mode to its limits, with a level named Bizarre Milestone, being created by none other than PG1004. PG is a name that strikes fear in the hearts of many, being known for creating levels and then ruining them with unfair and unneeded updates. This level was brutal in every single way possible, featuring confusing memory, some of the tightest ship gameplay imaginable, and cars, which looked pretty nice. But it was a throne that would be short-lived as well, as Update 1.6 would bring with it a tidal wave of new creators and even harder levels. While there weren't any new modes in 1.6, it did introduce many features like secret coins, map packs, and even a demon level created by Rob himself, Clubstep. Upon seeing this level, PG was intrigued and decided to re-envision the level's difficulty. While Clubstep was an easy demon, PG Clubstep would also be an easy demon, but not for long. You see, Rob thought that PG Clubstep was so impressive that he would place it in the newly introduced map packs. Now, a normal player would be careful with the power they had, but PG instead opted to continuously update the level with unbalanced and confusing gameplay choices. Clearly, things had changed since Bizarre Milestone. One version of the level was so difficult in fact, that it would be the hardest level ever, before being nerfed and later made harder again. Strange, I know. The community grew to despise PG Clubstep for its unbalanced gameplay, but what's interesting is that PG himself couldn't even tolerate unbalanced gameplay. Recently, he departed from the game due to an 8-star having questionable gameplay. Nearly a decade of playing, but this is the straw that broke the camel's back. Luckily, PG Clubstep's reign wouldn't last very long, as an even more atrocious level, XYZ Step Infinity would take over. Despite XYZ Step's lack of innovation, the level somehow became a sensation, inspiring a player named Orca SN to create XYZ Step Infinity, which was an even worse iteration of the original. The level would push beyond the limits of hard demons, finally introducing the elusive insane demon difficulty. So, after Orca SN tragically died at 98%, the level would be graced upon the servers, being one of the most disliked demons to this day. The level would be updated a lot, until after years, it would fortunately stop receiving updates. Until literally a couple weeks ago, the player came back from the dead and buffed the level again. Do these creators thrive on human suffering? It's a question that may never be answered, but one thing's for sure. Levels like these are a surefire way to ensure we'll never solve world hunger. Despite the chaos caused by these demon levels, the excitement was far from over. Rob had already begun teasing the next update, and players were eagerly awaiting the new features and challenges Update 1.7 would bring. Geometry Dash Update 1.7 was huge for the community. Despite not adding any new modes, it did bring in the ability for players to adjust the speed of their gameplay. No more were levels bound to extremely underwhelming drops when you could do something like this. This seemingly small change had a huge impact, as players struggled to adapt to these new mechanics. During this time, a player named Centuple was finishing off his May series. These were a set of levels that are very memory oriented, and players often struggled with them. Despite that, however, his next installment would completely overshadow all his previous creations, being the hardest one yet. Primary Maze was notable for being the first extra long level ever uploaded to the game's servers. This is due to the fact that most songs in game were only around 1 minute and 30 seconds long. So players were left staring into an empty abyss halfway through a level when the song abruptly ended. Sadly, all of Centuple's other maze levels have been lost over time, making Primary Maze a unique relic in the game's history. It wouldn't be long, however, until a level named Deadly Eclipse would take the top 1 spot. Until something interesting would happen. You see, this level would be created by a player named Neptune, who had garnered tons of popularity due to his great creations and even greater playing skills. That would all come crashing down, however, when it was exposed that Neptune was a cheater, sending shockwaves throughout the community. Fortunately though, a player named Lunarsing would come in clutch and finally beat this beast of a level after thousands of attempts, even before iconic players like Aeon Air or Riot. Despite only posting a screenshot without a video, Lunar is a very credible player who had been at the top for months, and is still around to this day. And while Deadly Eclipse was certainly a difficult level, it was nothing compared to the challenge that would arrive in Update 1.9. Update 1.9 is commonly regarded as the golden age of Geometry Dash. Players were now able to use any song they imagined, were able to create levels with over 15,000 objects, and even were able to use the newly introduced Wave mode. The wave would instantly become a favorite among the community, and due to its versatile nature, it wouldn't be long until it would be pushed to its limit. Soon. During the verification of Stalemate, the verifier Nox had his replay bug out and not record it properly. Imagine completing a near impossible creation, just for your device to not record it properly. Fortunately, Nox had built a very strong background over the years, and many players believed him, and so Stalemate would place at number 1. But this wouldn't last very long. A popular player named Zobros had been taking the community by storm. Not only was he one of the best players, but has also grown to build masterpieces. Zobros had taken a keen interest in this new mode, decided to create some of the hardest wave gameplay imaginable on his level Acropolis. Despite the level being extremely slow, the timings are so brutal that it was placed on the throne with ease. The level also had a verification video, which would slowly become more common in the following years. Now, you might have noticed that Update 1.8 wasn't included, but it nearly was. Necropolis was created in a couple of days by the infamous creator Neptune, but after being outed as a hacker, he would end up being crowned illegitimate. Now, this normally would be the end of the story. However, a player named Elite would pick this creation up and update later, and would finally verify this after 10,000 attempts. The level was so difficult for its time that despite being verified months later, it still sat on the throne for a very long period. Another instance of an illegitimately verified level involves a creation named Alphabet X, which was built during Update 1.6. The level's creator, BlackPTS Full, had a history of creating obviously cheated levels, including Silent Club, until Zobros would come back years later and would slay it in only 2,000 attempts, which is insane for a top 1. Zobros truly was ahead of its time, until the level would be dethroned a day later. During the events of late 2014, an up-and-coming creator named GGBoy was intrigued by these top 1s, and decided to leave his own 2 cents on this trend by creating a level named Cataclysm. After 80,000 attempts, the level would be verified, and uploaded onto the servers for anyone to play. The attempt count compared to levels like Alphabet X was massive for its time, allowing for the level to be flooded with attention. It would later turn out that this whole thing was illegitimate, but not before a fierce competition to conquer the level would commence. Nearly 3 months after Cataclysm's so-and-so verification, the level would finally be beaten by a player named Cyclic, an impressive feat that marked a new era for the game. Except it turns out, this was likely cheated as well, and the real verifier title would go to Gyron only 4 days later, beating the level on stream. Many top players would begin finishing this level, one of which being Riot, who would change the game's history very soon. Bloodbath would begin creation a couple months later, being heavily inspired by Cataclysm. Just minutes ago, we were talking about ship parts that looked like this, but now they had grown to this. With the level relying on the ship game mode so much for its gameplay, the level would be given to Riot due to his skill in the game mode. He would grind tirelessly every day for months, streaming nearly every single moment of it, until eventually it would be verified. Upon posting this on YouTube, it would go viral, with the video sitting at 6 million views to this day. How was Riot able to beat this level though? Well, Riot had been playing on a 144Hz monitor, which, to keep it short, allowed for the game's inputs to be a lot more accurate, especially with the ship. This led to many players flooding to get these monitors, causing an increase in the community's skill. Now, more players than ever were competing to get to the top, which would only be enhanced by the up-and-coming update, Update 2.0. The previous updates had only spent a minuscule amount of time in development, but 2.0 had taken over half a year. Imagine what the update would hold. Update 2.0 is huge. Now, creators gain the ability to make objects move, teleport players, and utilize a new mode known as the robot. It wouldn't be long until creators would begin using these features in top 1s, and soon enough, a level named Phobos would be born. Phobos was a collaboration by GMT San. The level had a huge roster of creators, who were sick of the level's long wait time. No player even wanted to come remotely close to this amalgamation, and the level would go unverified for months. One of these creators, TigerSec, was so sick of it that you'd pick the level up and illegitimately beat it. The level would soon be raided, but players did have their suspicions. The map was verified completely out of nowhere, and the evidence TigerSec provided was slim. Soon, TigerSec would confess, and the level would be removed from the servers. Fortunately, a player named Carmel managed to obtain a copy of the level, and began the challenging task of verifying it. The level needed to be nerfed significantly from its original state, which was nearly unplayable. Even one of the parts doesn't fit on the screen, which is hilarious. However, after the nerfs were implemented, the level was legitimately published to the servers. Despite being incredibly difficult, players initially ranked it below Bloodbath. It wouldn't be until years later that people realized that Phobos was way more challenging, and it was subsequently ranked above Bloodbath. However, by that point, both levels had lost their status at the top. Wacropolis has to be one of the most unfortunate tales throughout the video. You see, this map features brutal ship and wave sections, being one of the few cases where a majority of players believe the level was top 1, unlike nowadays. This creation would be verified by Blast in a minuscule 8,000 attempts, which is nothing compared to the previous levels. But there's one caveat. You see, for a level to be placed on the demon list, it has to be rated to confirm it's up to the quality standard, but the level would never be rated. It's not like the level wasn't ever seen by Rob. He has multiple times said he doesn't want to rate it, which is so strange. You almost never see this kinds of stuff with regular levels. The map looks stunning and has aged surprisingly well over the course of the past 6 years, but the dark reality is that this will likely never get the recognition it deserves, all due to it being in the hands of someone who mysteriously despised it. Let's travel way back to update 1.2. Remember how I mentioned that there's an exploit where levels could be verified in practice mode? Well, this would be patched out for future updates, which would lead to the downfall of one player named San0924. San had been growing his reputation as one of the best players out there with his Hell series. These were a set of levels that featured extremely challenging gameplay, especially for update 1.2. However, as the game was updated with new features and abilities, San failed to keep up. He continued to create levels using the outdated 1.2 editor, even though more advanced editors had been released. This quickly caught the attention of other players when he posted a screenshot of his new level on the forums. They noticed that he was still exploiting the practice mode glitch in update 1.2, despite it already being update 1.4. San's reputation was permanently tarnished, and he was forced to retire from the game. However, a few years later, a team of creators called Team 2 became interested in these levels, and attempted to recreate them in the new age of 2.0. They released their version called the Hell Zone, but unfortunately, history repeated itself, when the notorious hacker Cyclic uploaded it onto the servers illegitimately. Months later, a player named Starfly managed to beat the level in just 9,000 attempts, a remarkable feat for the time. However, the level wouldn't be rated until after other much harder levels had already taken over, meaning that it could have been a top level if it was rated much earlier. This infamous creation would soon be taken over by an interesting player to say the least. Sonics is a top player who was quickly gaining notoriety. He had quite a few achievements by this point, but his first extremely difficult one would be a Thanatos, a level that had been created and illegitimately verified by another player named Xinity. Sonics achieved this feat in only 7,000 attempts, but his victory was short-lived, as another top-rated level, Anesthesia, soon entered the scene. This level was a brutal remake of Thanatos, and it took the verifier Software, Virus, months of struggle to finish it. Unfortunately, the level was never rated and garnered little attention. You see, Cyclic's tale doesn't go as shallow as a hacker, but is much more. Cyclic and Riot had been duking out top 1s for months, seeing who would last the longest. While Riot was peaking with Bloodbath, Cyclic was anxious. If Riot verified this, it would easily overshadow all of Cyclic's hard work. And so, he began creating a rival project to Bloodbath, Sonic Wave. The level was brutal, unlike anything the community had seen thus far, and after only a few days, would be verified by Cyclic. Despite the difficulty, it would quickly be underestimated and swept under the rug. The disaster wouldn't end there though. You see, Cyclic had beat the level off recording, and was forced to splice a showcase run to prove his legitimacy. Rob was suspicious, and the level wasn't rated for weeks, leaving Cyclic devastated. He eventually removed the levels from the servers, vowing to make it even better. Cyclic remade the level, changing the color palette to a darker shade of blue, and making some modifications before re-verifying it and uploading it again. This time, the level was quickly rated and became a huge hit, with millions of downloads. But then, mysteriously, Cyclic updated the level to a new version called Cyclic on Track, which was soon deleted. It turned out that Cyclic had hacked the level once again, with the level falling dormant for months. It had nearly been a year since Bloodbath's verification, and Riot was intrigued by his rival's level. And soon a race would commence with Riot, Mifui, and Sonics being the leading players. Despite such a huge roster, these three players would struggle. Riot would face a 96% fail, leading to him not coming back to the level for years. Mifui would suffer an even more devastating 98% fail, leading to him quitting the game and auctioning his account on the forums. Sonics would be the luckiest player among them all, and after months of struggle, would be the first ever person to beat this level. A massive feat for the community. This didn't stop players from once again underestimating it. The level would fall back to number 2 5 separate times, before ultimately being reverted back to number 1. The level was truly out of its time. Sonics had grown extremely consistent towards Sonic Wave. In fact, he would go on to verify his third ever top 1, a level called Sonic Bath, which is essentially Sonic Wave with Bloodbath at the end. Surprisingly though, this wouldn't be the end of Sonics' reign, as he would come back later with one final level. Could he verify his 4th top 1? Before that can happen, however, an interesting controversy would occur. This is Skub and Realm, a level that has aged questionably to say the least. It is full of unbalanced difficulty spikes, downright confusing memory, and beyond awful decoration. So, a player named Medius would begin verifying the level, streaming most of the level's progress, achieving runs like 33 to 159%. Inevitably, after 100,000 attempts, he would finally beat this level. But to one caveat, the verification didn't record any clicks. This instantly tore the community apart, and to this day, the verification isn't denied or confirmed for its legitimacy. I personally think the completion is legitimate, but who knows? This will continue to be an unsolved mystery for ages to come. Soon enough though, this achievement would be overshadowed by an even stranger completion. Death Corridor is a notorious impossible level that was never intended to be beaten. However, a player named Kugelblitz began making steady progress, and even made a vow with the creator that he would be the only one to verify it. Despite facing numerous hurdles, Kugel's goal became seemingly achievable. Until, out of nowhere, a top player named Noctify would steal the level, beating it with ease. This spawned massive controversy for both sides, leading to Kugel almost being exiled out of the verification, until eventually, Noctify would be exposed as a hacker, and the verification process would return back to normal. This would lead to Sonics asking for a copy of the level, which Kugel agreed. Sonics would also beat the level fairly quickly, which would turn out to be a top 1, being his 4th thus far. Despite that, however, due to the vow, the level wasn't allowed to be rated, with the level being an interesting relic in history. This would also mark Sonics' incredible reign over the community, with him holding the title to 4 verified top 1s, more than any player in history. Before long, Death Corridor Z lost its top spot to an intriguing new creation called the Plasma Pulse series. This collection of levels was designed by Smokes and Gyron, and was known for its unforgiving difficulty. The final level of the series, Plasma Pulse Finality, was said to be the most challenging level yet. Despite its daunting reputation, Smokes managed to complete the level in a remarkably small number of attempts, only 14,000. This was a surprisingly low number for a level of such caliber and reputation, making it an impressive feat for the community. The stage held its position at the top of the leaderboard for several months, until an unexpected event took place. Mannix was on top of the community, with them releasing project after project. All of them were attempting to take the top 1 spot, but they barely fell short. Bloodlust was his last shot in the dark, being the biggest remake of Bloodlust thus far. After a couple of months of creating, the level would finally be finished and began attempting to get verifiers. Despite the monumental popularity of the level, not a single player would hold on to this level for more than a couple months. This was brutal, almost incomprehensible to a normal player. It seemed hopeless until a player named Nobbleboy took on the challenge of completing this beast. Nobbleboy quickly began pouring thousands upon thousands of attempts into this level. With each passing month, the community's excitement for his progress dwindled, and doubts arose about whether he was skilled enough to complete it. Eventually, another player named Krazen stole the verification, leading Nobbleboy's efforts in question. Despite Krazen's fast progress, most of the community sided with him. He was a well-established player with a string of successful attempts to his name. Eventually, however, the dispute would be settled, and Nobbleboy would return to the level once and for all. Finally, after 120,000 attempts, he would finish off Bloodlust, with his verification grossing over 10 million views, one of the most the verification had ever received. Crimson Planet wouldn't be as lucky as Bloodlust, however. The level would be verified only 3 months after Nobbleboy, taking 4 times less attempts. Crimson Planet was brutal in every way possible, and many in the community agreed that it was harder than Bloodlust. The level wouldn't be rated for over a year, until far harder maps had been released, like Zodiac. Zodiac was created in 2017, and like Bloodlust, it went through several verifiers due to its nearly 3-minute long length and brutal difficulty. Despite the many attempts, no one had been able to complete the level. Fearing that level would fade into obscurity, Xander illegitimately verified it and posted it on YouTube. Even without any proof, Xander's claims were believed by many, and the level was rated. However, Xander's guilt eventually caught up to him, and he confessed to hacking the entire level 3 months later. But there would be a cog in the gears. Technical became the first player to legitimately complete the level after countless non-stop streams. Despite him completing it, his record couldn't be accepted. The level had to be removed from the list due to a rule that banned hacked levels, even if it was later legitimately beaten. This allowed Crimson Planet to briefly take the top spot. Following a heated debate that lasted a few days, the level was ultimately reinstated on the list, with Technical as the verifier. The level would last for months, before inevitably being overtaken by Riot's comeback. Riot had been working on a project for years, even before Bloodbath, but it had been stagnant until 2018 when it was finally finished. The level was incredibly difficult, even for the time, so Riot put on a bounty to encourage players to attempt it. However, despite years passing, no one had made significant progress. This trend of extremely difficult levels cycling through numerous verifiers continued, and Tartarus was no exception. Until one day, a relatively small player would take the level into his own hands, and would begin grinding. Moldy's progress quickly took the community by storm, with many eyes shifting towards him. Despite suffering massive fails, Moldy would keep on pushing, until something huge happened. Moldy's position was quickly threatened with a new player that had entered the ring, Dolphy. They began duking it out, with each one upping each other's fails. Both were close, yet so far. As with the turn of the new year, Dolphy would verify the level. Except it wasn't over. Dolphy was an incredibly suspicious player, and his completion was deemed illegitimate. It wouldn't be until months of providing proof for Dolphy to be proven legitimate, but by then it was far too late. Moldy had verified the level only a month later, with them being given the verification title. After the news of Dolphy's legitimacy broke out, however, Moldy would give Dolphy the title back, and Dolphy's version would be rated. It is unfortunate that Moldy never became the verifier, despite being the one to push the level out of stagnation, but you can't help but honor Moldy's integrity in this situation. Tartarus held the top spot for an impressive length of time, solidifying its position as one of the longest standing levels ever. However, it was eventually dethroned by Oblivion, a reimagining of another difficult level, Cognition, that showed even harder and tighter gameplay. The map quickly caught the attention of a skilled player by the name of Dice88, who managed to complete it. He claimed that Oblivion deserved a spot in the top 15, and the community didn't bat an eye. The level wouldn't be rated for months, so the difficulty wasn't thoroughly investigated. Nevertheless, after a full year of being outside of Rob's vision, it was finally rated and placed above Tartarus, which had by now settled into the top 10. It's incredible to think that a level which began as a random top 15 contender and wasn't rated for over a year was the first to successfully dethrone Tartarus from its long-standing reign. It doesn't end there though. You see, after the verification of Sonic Wave, many in the community were interested in pushing the level to its absolute limits. And so, a creator named Viperin began remaking the level, dubbed Sonic Wave Infinity. After being completed, Ryo would begin attempting the level, hastily making progress, until everything went quiet. The community wouldn't hear about the level for months, and the creation would remain dormant. Luckily though, the level would eventually fall back into relevance, after being remade and redecorated by AP Team. The level would go through several verifiers before landing on a rising player named Zanny, who would verify a slightly nerfed version after a couple months. Initially, the level would be placed at number 3, which was quite underwhelming for the community, whom expected a top 1. This wouldn't last, however, as it would soon be moved up to number 2 and then number 1, with the level currently sitting above Tartarus today. Another level that is believed to have the potential to dethrone Tartarus was Arcturus. This level began as an impossible level, featuring some of the most challenging gameplay that was humanly possible. Despite its initial difficulty, the level was visually stunning, which led to the creator, MaxFFs, to believe that it was worthy of remaking it into a top 1. After a few nerfs to make it obviously achievable, Arcturus was handed over to Ultrakawa HD, who dedicated over 130,000 attempts to conquer it, an impressive feat that surpassed even that of Bloodlust. However, despite its challenging gameplay, the level faced significant controversy around its quality. While it was an excellent impossible level, its status as a regular level was questionable. It's likely Rob didn't approve of the decoration either, and believed that this shouldn't be what was on the front page of the community. As a result, the level was only rated once 2 even harder levels were released, but more on that later. In 2019, Very Subo Challenge was created, which was notorious for being a brutal 15-second challenge. Despite its short duration, it managed to surpass levels like Tartarus in difficulty. The creator, Bo, attempted to verify it, and after nearly 300,000 attempts, it was verified. However, it was later revealed that Bo had hacked the level, leading to a race between 2 players, Konix and Yassarian, to become the first legitimate verifier. Surprisingly, Yassarian spent half as many attempts as Bo did, and even managed to fluke the level from 49%. Even 2 years later, this fluke from 49 remains one of the most impressive achievements in the community. Now, many players debate whether or not VC remains the hardest level, but due to it being such a difficult thing to rank compared to normal levels, we'll move on. Slaughterhouse is one of the most controversial histories to date. Originally an impossible level created by Ice Cave, it was later handed over to Doggy after some nerfs and was expected to be a top 10 level. However, when Doggy's progress was announced, many players rushed to find it, leading to many searching up Doggy Slaughterhouse, which must have been a gruesome sight to see. Doggy would eventually drop it, and the level was turned into a verification race, allowing anyone to complete it. Progress is slow and steady until a player called Space K unexpectedly completed it, with the level turning out to be way harder than expected. This caused a stir in the community, with many assuming that Space K was legitimate. Doggy would soon return to the level, and would eventually beat it a couple months later. Little did Doggy know, however, he was the actual verifier, as nearly 2 years later, Space would be exposed as a cheater, and Doggy was recently given the verification title. At the time, another level named Firework had just been verified a couple days after Space's Slaughterhouse completion, but since many believed that Space was legitimate, Firework was reverted to number 2. But even though Doggy wouldn't verify Slaughterhouse for a few more months, VC had already been released. Traveling a couple years back, after the success of Black PTS Full Silent Club, a player named Salient was inspired to create a heavily inspired level based on it, dubbed Silent Club Step. However, upon its release, many players quickly pointed out the level's brutal difficulty and deemed it unverifiable. This led to little progress being made on the level for years, as most players attempted it but quickly gave up, but soon that would all change. In 2020, Ice Cave reached out to Salient and offered to bounce and fix any impossible parts in the level, due to physics updates that had happened over the years. To everyone's surprise, Salient agreed, and players began making progress, with Hyperbola being one of the first to push the limits by going from 24 to 100. Shortly after, Packway became the first player to reach the drop, and Vision was the first to hit 65%. All being massive feats for the time. After a period of dormancy, progress picked up again when Packway also reached 65%, bringing them neck and neck with Vision. Although Vision had put in almost 500,000 attempts at this point, he was unfortunately beaten to the finish line by Packway. The level's difficulty was still quite unbalanced after the update, and it was very challenging to rank. This led to players originally placing the level at 4, with Slaughterhouse still sitting at number 1. Recently though, this has been changed, with Silent Clubstep now sitting above it. Do you remember Tartarus? Well, Riot was gradually making a comeback to the game after years of absence. He was posting new completions regularly until he uploaded a new level that caught the community's attention, Acheron. The level received positive feedback from previews, and soon the level would be released, with verifiers beginning to attempt it, but none succeeded. Riot, fearing another bloodlust situation, made the level open verification like Tartarus, and soon, many players joined in. They had the option to bounce level, which sparked controversy with a player named Zoink, who became the first to complete it. The level was ranked number 1, but the community noticed that the gameplay wasn't enjoyable. With the difficulty in the game skyrocketing, it was rare for a level to be both the top 1 and fun to play. The game had become so challenging that every level felt like a chore, and the community shared this sentiment. Adding fuel to the fire, Zoink released a buff date that made the level less forgiving. This caused a significant uproar, and Rob secretly reverted the level to its original state, meaning that Zoink technically held 2 top 1 spots at the same time. It's no secret geometrydash has evolved over the years, with us having over 40 top 1s across the game's lifespan. From its humble beginnings with 7 stars to levels that only a select few can beat, many projects are on the horizon, and Riot even plans to finish off the Tartarus and Acheron trilogy with the final level named Eternal. Who knows what the future can hold, but as always, thanks for watching.